Well, obviously, folks, the big elections this week, Democrats suffered a humiliating loss in the state of Virginia, but hey, they actually got a pretty big victory up in New Jersey. Either way, a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking has been going on in the days since that Tuesday election, and it's time for me to finally weigh in on it too, right? Now that the dust is settled, and let me start by saying this. There's a very clear problem with the Democratic Party right now. Their number one issue, the thing that killed them on Tuesday, was because they have not delivered on their promises to the American public. So let's get that straight right now. It wasn't the progressives, it was the corporatists. It wasn't, as people like Sally Albright said, because Bernie did his stupid thing. Nope, not at all true. You're really, really bad at this. The Democrats haven't delivered for the American public. They made lofty promises. They've scaled every single one of those promises back, including the stimulus checks they sent out earlier this year. That's the number one problem. But the number two problem is something that I think a lot of people, especially those on the left, even those further to the left, are dismissing. Because it's not just that we're not delivering. That is obviously the number one issue, don't get me wrong. But the number two is that the Democratic Party sucks at messaging. You lost to a candidate, to a party that made up a fake issue, critical race theory being taught in Virginia schools, that doesn't exist. Critical race theory is not taught in schools in Virginia. As far as I know, it's not taught in any public schools anywhere in the United States. But that was the number one issue for those voters in Virginia. And Democrats had no message to counter it. If the Democrats cannot come up with good talking points, with good rebuttals, with language that actually resonates with the public the way Republicans do, then they're toast. Because even when you deliver for the public, if you allow Republicans to capture the narrative on these things, think Obamacare, you gave the public something decent. Notice I said decent, not good. It was decent. It was better than what we had. But Republicans were so busy hating on it, calling it socialized medicine, that they captured the narrative of that, spread it all around their conservative media, brainwashed the American public, and they swept the 2010 midterms. So you did something decent, but you failed on the messaging. So even when they deliver, they still suck at messaging. And that's what the party has to get better at. And the number one reason conservatives are so much better at it is because they have an echo chamber, the likes of which dwarfs anything that we have on the left. We got to be honest about that. They've got more billionaires than you can count. More millionaires than anything the left has. You know, they always talk about George Soros. George Soros doesn't pay for shit anymore. George Soros barely paid for shit back when he was still relevant. And I know I've been a member of multiple groups that have, basically had to beg him for money only to be told no every single time. Whether it was liberal media outlets or climate change initiatives. Dude's not as generous as Republicans think, but their donors are. And they fund these little conservative outlets, these conservative talkers, these conservative groups, these conservative influencers. On top of the fact that you have One America, Newsmax, Fox News, and about 1 million different conservative websites out there, all pushing the same coordinated talking points. Whether they're intending to or not, they are. And of course, you have the fact that even some of the smallest, stupidest podcasts out there on the right are able to book the big name Republican politicians so that they can reach the biggest audience possible. And therein lies the problem, folks. Politicians on the left, sure, they'll show up on shows every now and then, mostly MSNBC and CNN and occasionally Fox. But other shows that may have hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers, some shows that have over 1 million subscribers, they're a little reluctant to do that. We don't want to work with those in leftist media. And sure, there's a couple politicians that are obvious exceptions to that. And I understand they're busy people. I've been in this industry as a booker for 17 years. I know. But I also couldn't tell you how many times people said no. Literally the one exception to that was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, we booked him here on Ring of Fire back when we were doing the radio show over a dozen times, I think one time out of all the times I asked, he was unavailable. Any other time, totally willing to do it. Sheldon Whitehouse, actually, the same way. But we don't have that. You know, when George W. Bush was president, he actually had a conservative media summit twice in the Oval Office, where he brought in these conservative talkers from Fox, from conservative radio, from other conservative outlets, into the Oval Office and had a secret meeting with them, and he did it twice. Where you at, Biden? I'm available. I'll fly to D.C. tomorrow and meet with you in the Oval Office, and we can discuss messaging and we can discuss strategy. You know, a couple years ago, David Pakman, this was pre-pandemic, I think the pandemic derailed it, but I hope he gets back on this. Pakman actually had an idea, and he was working with Ro Khanna to have basically a progressive roundtable. These progressive hosts go to D.C., meet with these progressive lawmakers, the squad essentially, to help with messaging, to help, figure out ways to get the message out there and to get everybody on the same page. That's what we need. That's what we have to have, because the right does it all the time. And if we don't get on it, and these Democratic politicians don't start taking the progressive media seriously, then next year is going to be an absolute bloodbath for the Democratic Party. They're going to get killed at the polls, and they're going to lose because Republicans push fake issues, and Democrats clearly have no response for that at all.